All right. So previously we've talked about, if we wanted to quickly animate something, we didn't want to have to draw it frame by frame. One thing we could do is something like what I've done here, where I have this cat, and this cat's broken into multiple levels. Okay, so the head is on one level, and the torso is on another level, and the back leg there, and the tail is there. And the thing about it is that, let's hypothetically say I was to move the torso. Okay, so I'm going to move the, whoops, wrong layer. I'm on the tail layer. I'm going to click on my torso, but when I move the torso, it kind of moves on its own, right? But in real life, if this was like a stuffed animal, if I move the torso of a stuffed animal, it's not just that one part. It would move the head, because the head in theory is attached here, and it would move the tail, and it would move this other leg. But because these are on separate levels, that's not quite happening. So if I was to animate this torso, having it move across the page using position, that part moves, but the rest of it doesn't move, right? So then what you'd have to do is you then have to go, well, that looks awkward for just the torso to move, so I'd have to, take the head and animate the head, so it's kind of, roughly staying in place. But that's hard, so there's actually a much easier way to do this, which is that we can use something called a schematic. Okay, what the schematic allows you to do is say what the relationship of the levels are to each other. So what I'm going to do is go to my panels. I'm going to go down it's about halfway down, and it's called schematic. And what this is doing is showing the relationship between the different levels. Okay, so the table is like, it's called a table because it's like an old-fashioned animation table, like where you draw on. So the table is like your scene, is like your entire scene. And you'll notice that I have like, these are the instructions, which technically I don't really need those. But I have, you can see that there's the head of the cat, the leg, the tail, and the torso. Okay. And right now, each of these is kind of independent. Okay, what I want to do is I want to attach the head, the leg, and the tail to the torso so that the torso becomes the main object. And when I move the torso, it's going to move the other objects with it. Okay, so basically this is what we call a parent-child relationship, where this is like the parent and these are the children, and whatever the parent does, the children will follow. So what I'm going to do is right now there's this blue line showing the connection of the table to the head, which means if I move the table, all of these would move. I'm going to set this is the input, this is the output. I'm going to set this input to the output of my torso. Okay. When you're in the stage schematic, you can actually zoom in and out by using the same zoom tools like we did. So there's also a zoom tool here, by the way, if you want to click and zoom in and out. There's also a hand tool, just like in our normal area. But what I'm doing here is I'm set up, this is now the parent, this is the child. So if I go back and I was to move the torso, notice how both the head and the torso move. Now the tail and the leg didn't move because those were not attached to the torso. So I need to go back to my schematic. And once again, what I'm going to do is set these to be, I'm going to set the input of the tail to the output of the torso. Same with the leg. So what this is essentially doing is connecting these three levels to be children of this main level. Okay, so whatever I do to the torso level is going to affect this, and this. Okay, so that's going to make my job as animation a lot easier, because basically I only have to animate one level now. I don't have to worry about all the subsequent ones, because whatever happens to this level happens essentially to everything. So for instance, I'm going to set up a animation. So I want the cat to move across the entire screen. So on frame 1, I'm just going to move and set it, if there's not already, make sure there's a keyframe over here. And then at the end, about frame 35, the cat's going to go to the left side of the screen. And like, as always, it kind of makes this simple, motion tween or keyframe animation. Okay. Maybe I want the cat to kind of rotate too. I don't know why, but let's just hypothetically say I wanted that. So I'm going to set the rotation. Right now it's set to 0. I want it to rotate counterclockwise. So that's negative 360. So my cat, oops, and I'm going to set this to 0. So the cat's kind of rotating here. I'm setting the middle of the object here, so it should rotate around that. So there you go. So there's the cat. So notice that when the torso rotates, so does everything else. So not only is it moving, not only does the position work, so does the rotation. So when I play this back, okay. Now, what's nice about this is that even though this is animating as a whole, I can actually animate the children independently. Okay, so what I mean by that is right now my tail is connected to the torso. The torso is already moving across the screen. I'm actually just going to get rid of the rotation because I think it's being a little confusing at the moment. So I'm just going to get rid of this rotation. All right. But what I would like the tail to do is I want the tail to sort of, kind of wave or wag back and forth while the rest of it is moving. So what I'm going to do is I've already kind of set up the tail. It's actually got its center point there. So if I rotate the tail, it kind of rotates like that, right? And so I'm going to rotate the tail back and forth. And while while that's rotating back and forth, or the cat is moving, notice that the tail is moving. Okay. So you could see how this could be really helpful if you were animating a character with many levels, like a head level and a torso level and a leg level and so on and so on. You could animate you could choose sort of one main part to move the entire character while animating subparts as well, like I'm doing here. All of this in a relatively, simple amount of time. I mean, doing something like this could take a long time to animate, frame by frame, just drawing it, and this is a lot quicker. Now, granted, it's not as fluid, but it's definitely quicker, and there's something to be said for that in animation. I'm going to do another example of a schematic. So once again, it's like I have this character here, and right now if I was to say move the body, if I move the body, it just moves that one body part, but the arms and the legs don't go together. So what I'm going to do is connect them all into schematic. So I'm going to go to the schematic. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. All right, so this is the body. I'm going to make the body the main part. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the right eye and the left eye to the body. I'm also going to attach the legs and the arms to the body. Okay. I might need to reposition some things just to get them into place. Now I have this hat, and I'm also going to set the hat to the body. And so these are all children of this. So if I move the body, all of these will move. And I'm actually going to set the feather that's in the hat to be a child of the hat. So this is a child of this, and then this is a child of this. So if I move the hat, it would affect the feather because that's a child of this, but it wouldn't affect the other things because this is only a child, it wouldn't affect these others unless the main one moved. Okay, so essentially what I'm doing here is I'm creating like these levels of hierarchy here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is actually, let's animate the feather. I'm going to animate the feather kind of rotating back and forth. Actually, sorry, I don't want the feather, I want the hat. The reason why I'm showing the hat is to show you that if I affect the hat, see how it affects the hat and the feather together, because the feather is a child of the hat. So I'm just kind of animating the hat, or, the hat. So it's affecting the feather because the feather is a child of the hat, but the rest of the body is not moving. Now if I move the body, so let's say while that hat is moving or rotating, I'm going to move the body across the page. So I'm going to set the body to position, and let's move the hat over, or sorry, the body over here, and I'm going to set this over here. So what's happening is the body is moving while the hat is rotating. So these are separate actions all going on at the same time. The main body is moving while the subpart is animating on its own, which has its own child. Okay. This might be a little bit hard to think about, but think about it as like if I'm waving my hand while my body is moving, it's like my body as a whole is moving. That's one action. But then the subsequent action is my hand doing this, right? And that's kind of what's going on here, where the orange is moving and then the hat is moving on top of that. Feel free to animate other parts of his body too. Let's see where we could do this, make this a little bit more interesting. So I have this ghost, and this ghost is kind of like bumping up to this rock, kind of like nudging it. Kind of like think of it if it was like an elephant in the wild, and it's like pushing something with its head, okay? And I have this boulder right here, which is on a separate level that I drew. So the ghost is going to come in, and then what I wanted to do is I want the ghost to push the rock. So as this character is going to move forward, it's going to move both off screen. So I have two separate layers, and what I made is another layer, or another level that I called parent level. Okay, so watch what I do here. So I'm going to go to my schematic, and I'm going to zoom in, and here's my parent level, and I'm going to make both the ghost and the boulder a child of the parent level. So these are allowed to animate independently because they're children. If I do anything to the parent level, it's going to affect both of them because they're both children of the parent level. So right now the ghost is coming in and it's kind of animating on its own, and then right about here is where I want them to act like a unit. In other words, like I want the ghost and the rock to animate, or the boulder to animate together. So that's where I'm going to animate the parent level. I'm going to set a keyframe, and I can move the parent level, which really moves both of them. And the subsequent animation looks like this, where it's like the ghost is kind of like struggling, and then it's pushing, that level and that level are now working together. So like, once again, maybe I'm going to make another level here. I'm going to call it, maybe there's like a feather or something that falls onto it. So I'm going to make a separate layer called feather, okay? And let's say I was animating a feather. You know, this is going to be really quick, not great animation. But it's like, all right, there's that, and it kind of falls, and, you know. Not going to be my greatest animation, I'm just warning you. Alright. On the twos. Alright, so I have this feather, and it's falling. Okay. Now, when the rock moves, in theory, the feather would also move, right? Well, the problem is this is on a separate level, so even if this extent, you know, what would happen is it just kind of like magically disappears. I don't want that to happen. So what could I do? Well, once again, I could go back to Schematic. And here's my feather layer, and I'm going to attach it to that parent level. So once again, when I animate the parent level, see how like see how I can move everything at once? So I'm just trying to show you some examples of like where this could be really handy. It could, you know, a lot of times people use it for complex characters that extend, you know, that have multiple parts on different levels. Or you could be animating things, but you want them to animate as a group. You know, a schematic is a great way to group things together to animate them as a group.